Hey, this is Nubatama Nubatama Third Eye Facebook page coming at you with updates, discussion, all sorts of good stuff. So, we got Shiranui in English, and there's lots to talk about. It's a really awesome engine for us. It helps us get protects real quick. It's our old boy Shiranui, and there are a number of finishers to talk about. Lots to talk about today, and so I will show the deck laid out at some point. Gonna just re-sleeve a few things, talk about quite a few things as we're going through. So got our boys sleeves. For those of you who don't know, this is actually Shiranui. Onimaru's been diff-road. Yeah, so if you're new to the game, go back and watch the final season of G-Era, you'll see that. So it's actually Shiranui. Onimaru is Shiranui. So got this from the Shiranui Oboro trial deck, Japanese trial decks, because as you guys know, I do collect Japanese Nubatama cards as well. So it's pretty cool. Just wanted to show that again. I think you guys have seen it before. But yeah, working on my SPs. I have 2 play sets so far. Hope to eventually fill up the rest. Kind of waiting for the hype prices to go down, honestly. I'm glad there's a lot of hype around Nubatama. That's really good. It's good for us, and I think it's legit. You know, I think our Protect deck is you know, it's nothing to bat an eye at. The ramp that we get in terms of getting protects and some of the plays we have now are pretty good. So what you see me doing here is I'm just re-sleeving old cards. I know some of y'all are really excited that she got reprinted. She was from the Oboro trial deck 13, G-Era trial deck. So pretty cool. But I'm just kind of feeling old school this morning, just re-sleeving, putting in, you know, the old characters that I want to have in the deck at the moment. Tobihiko, Hiragane. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. Just kind of hanging out this morning. It's really early here. It's 7 something. Why I'm up, who knows? Don't really know why. Other than I'm used to being up, you know, around 6 or something to go to work. And work's been pretty good. You know, I hope you all out there have been able to stay somewhat busy. I know, you know, I hear from, it seems like half people that, you know, they're staying real busy. In fact, they may even be busier before the pandemic. And then, you know, some people, I mean, there's quite a few people struggling out there, you know, quite a few. And, you know, it's hard. And, yeah, there's that. So 2020, man, 2020 is almost gone. And I'm okay with that. It's been an interesting year, to say the least. Vanguard has been really, you know, how much have I been able to play? A little bit. Watching from the sidelines a lot, you know. If I wasn't so lazy, I probably should try to get in on those Vision CFA tournaments, if it's even possible. I don't know how that works, but, you know, could have been doing that, potentially. So the deck I'm playing right now, or working on, and I got to play it a little bit yesterday for the first time. Pretty much playing the cookie cutter build. So here's some of my, it's just really cool, right? Full art, it's really, really cool. So 4-draw PG, I think these are really important. and I agree with others out there who've talked, keeping these perfect guards in here is pretty important. 8 crit, as you all know, I like sometimes to go 5 draw, 7 crit. I may do that. And then 4 heal, of course. One of the finishers that you can run is Fuse a Congo. The problem is, if you run Fuse a Congo, whenever I sit down and build a deck with Fuse a Congo, I always want to just take out the it's a Tengu. I don't think we need 8 Tengus. Whenever I'm thinking about Fuse a Congo, I think about, you know, taking these out. I mean, we can now go 16 crit. You know, if that's something that you want to do, you definitely can. So Fuse a Congo is a finisher that you can use in here. Part of the problem with that is when you use Shiranui with this, you're gonna get more drive checks, more possibilities of getting into heal. Usually heals are really good, right? Usually you want that. But in the case of Fuse a Congo, you don't. So definitely would want your opponent at 5 damage. You want to be just finishing him with that Fuse a Congo attack. I'm not that lucky. So if you are, awesome. So that's one of the finishers for the new Shiranui build. One of the other ones that we talk about out there is him. He's okay. You know, if you have 2 or more grade 3 cards in your soul, this is going to happen. You counterblast 1, discard 2 cards from your hand. So you definitely want to be finishing your opponent until end of turn. It gets plus 15 and a critical. And they can't call Sentinels. Wow, it sounds like Danger Lunge. But a bit more costly. Excuse me. So we have our own Danger Lunge. And he's definitely an option. That you can do. Again, you can go 16 crit, Fuse a Congo build, something like that if you want to. Not me. I'm not that lucky. So, although I like combos. You know, I like combo decks. So there's that. There's that to be said. One of the other finishers, definitely. Now we're getting into things I would highly recommend. Mizukaze is great, and this becomes more easily accessible because of the Shiranui ride chain, if you will. When he's placed, Soul Blast at grade 3. Until end of turn, your opponent cannot call grades that they've called. So if they guard with a grade 0 on this attack, when you attack over here, they can't use a grade 0. They could have used 2 grade 0s here, but now they can't use 1 here. They can only use 1, 2, and all 3. Or a 4 if they wanted to pitch it, you know, Gear Chronicle, Quickie, whatever, those kinds of things. So this really, it guard restricts, and it guard restricts in a different way. It guard restricts in a way that, as far as I know, is unique to Nubatama in that regard. The problem with this card, and there is a problem. If you Stealth Dragon Shiranui to get an Ouroboros, now you've got 1 Stealth Dragon in Soul, and then you have another Stealth Dragon on the rear guard, you attack, it goes into Soul, you now have 2 Shiranuis in Soul. In order to keep Ouroboros online to do the drive checks for your domination marker, as well as keep the 15k online for himself, you have to have another grade 3 in Soul. So you basically are going to want to have 3 grade 3s in Soul when you use this ability to go for that finish. Don't get me wrong. This is what I've been touting so far. This is what I like. And if you go this, I recommend just this. I don't recommend splashing in anything else with this, because you want to make your deck consistent, right? Your deck's got a game plan. You don't want a plan B. Now, you're going to have plan Bs here and there throughout the game, depending on what you draw into. You know, like G Station talked about, you know, if you draw a bad hand, what do you do? Sure, you're gonna have to do those kind of little tweaks here and there, turn by turn, to try to get to your finishing moves. But I definitely would keep your finishing move consistent, you know, and this is definitely a really good finisher. So I like this. And if you're going for less combo, if you're going for, oh, what did I say less? Yeah, less combo. If you just want that one card that's going to help finish, I would say this is even better than the other card that I just showed you. So there's that. Yeah. And so let's see, what are the other things here we got? We got our Shiranuis. So I was playing around with this. We'll get to this here next. And of course, I'm not I'm not probably covering all ground. Most certainly not covering all ground that you could do here in this deck. There's probably some Hanzo builds you could build. You maybe Splash and Storm. There's all sorts of things you can do. One of the other finisher, or I should say pressuring moves, not necessarily finisher, is using Koko Shigarasu. Now the really cool thing about this is when you ride Stealth and then you know, Superior Ride or Boro out of your deck, you just got your 2 markers that are required for him. And you've got Soul. You got a 0, 1, 2, 3, you know, you got 4 Soul there. So it's very feasible to do this. In fact, you can do this on your first grade 3 ride, as I was just explaining there, which it's kind of nuts, right? But, and that may be okay if you're at really low damage. You know, and I've said this before, if you're going to use this really early, you're going to want to make sure you're at really low damage, because you just threw away 2 really important protection items, those 2 protect markers. And so if you use this early, make sure you're at really low damage, 1, maybe 2. And then, you know, if you're at high damage, but your opponent, you know, the card count looks really favorable for you, to make it so that they can't guard that well, if at all, totally, all 4 of your attacks, because you're going to want to attack 4 times. Remember, I was saying the decks that do really well right now are attacking more than 3 times, typically, okay? That's just my take, that's my impression. Of course, decks that attack much more than that, they can be at more advantage, so. But what our advantage is we try to control our opponent's hand. So we're only going to have 4 attacks, similar, you know, in Storm you can even get an extra attack, right? But in this deck, which we're focused on now with Shiranui, you're gonna get the 4 attacks. This is basically gonna try to make it so that your opponent can't guard efficiently, effectively. Similarly to Mizukaze, okay? What Mizukaze is basically saying is, I don't care how many cards you have in hand, I'm going to control what you can drop on that G-guard zone during my attacks to finish you off. That's what this card says, and that's why this card really is standalone. You just want to make sure you've got three grade 3s in Soul to make it the most efficient attack lanes, and for your Dominate marker to still be able to drive check, which may not be necessary, but it's favorable. So he doesn't care if you're playing against OTT and they've got, you know, 15 cards in hand. You know, it really does not care. This card, it's trickier, because this card, it depends on what your opponent has on the field and what's in hand. So now you're starting to look at both field and hand, right? Now with this, sure, your opponent can intercept, there's that. But you get what I'm saying, right? So this is really controlling what you're going to be able to guard from the hand. This is looking at both the hand and the field. So one of the problems with him is your opponent has to have a card in play. And that's where this new wonderful card comes in. Yamato basically says your opponent has to, for 1 counterblast, you pay it, and they have to drop a card to the field. So if you're playing against Pale Moon, if you're playing against Grand Blue, this is almost guaranteed to be needed, depending on what your opponent's doing. Their field's empty. You're playing against Nubatama, they're like, okay, I'm gonna empty my field because I know that this thing is probably being played. Then in steps him. So you're gonna play him, counterblast one card out into play. They have to put a card down, and then you play this, you bounce that card, they have to now discard 5. Pretty cool. I also really like this card because it gets +5. I mean, thank you, Bushy Road. This is the kind of cards we need. Our numbers are usually really small. This card, in my mind, in terms of functionality, has somewhat replaced Tengu. So Tengu, this card is like, look, you're gonna drop. I'm not even gonna give you the option. You just have to put a card in play. Tengu says your opponent chooses a card from their hand, and it's a trigger card. So I like that, right? So it's high guard, and they may discard it. If they don't, I draw a card. Okay, fine. That's good and all. But I'm sitting there with an AK. This really isn't even a beater. This is like it's not gonna hit, right? He's 14. So very welcomed card. Both are good. I really like this card because of Jamio Congo. I like this card also because of Jamio Congo. So I wanted to just show Tengu because I thought about even running both of them. I'm not sure that's so necessary. I want to get to that here in a second. So KFC, Fukushigarasu, is definitely a welcomed option. Excel is on the rise. This is definitely a card that may help there. And so definitely, in my opinion, I shouldn't say definitely, in my opinion, really good finisher to consider. And you're gonna want to tech this in. And you're gonna want to tech this in because of things like Grand Blue, Pale Moon. Anyone who's really just avoiding putting a field out there, you're gonna want to tech him in. Now, this card is also really good with someone else that we all love. That's Jamio Congo. So Jamio Congo, if this is your first ride, which you absolutely do not want it to be your first ride in Shiranui, that is really inefficient. You're already in a pinch, already in a problem position, because if you're riding this, you're not getting your 2 protects in hand, and you're only forcing them down to 6. You drop this, they're down to 5. Okay, there's that. But this would be the last card you want to ride, and put them to 4. Use this, put them to 3. Okay, cool. The problem with him, the problem with this, is that you no longer have 4 attacks. Okay? You no longer have 4 attacks because you're no longer on Oboro. And so, do you run this or do you run KFC? KFC is going to take out your resources, your defense, which you're going to need against things like Luard, Gurguit, right? That's really going to help hit their field. So, you know, there's this. And I know there are people arguing, the people I really respect, to mix these 2. You can if you want. I don't recommend it, but you definitely can if you want. Mix those. So, I would say that those right there are the 3 best finisher choices. And with the last 2 there, you're gonna wanna run this guy, okay? Why am I sleeving, de-sleeving? Because I'm thinking about what I'm gonna build here and what I'm gonna play test, hopefully today. So there's that. So when you build a deck, you guys all know this. If you're new, it's some advice. Of of course, aesthetics, right? You have a character that you like, you know. But one of the first things you want to do is, how am I going to win? How am I going to win? How am I going to push so that my opponent has to work harder? That's what this is all about here. So, one card, that's all that is. But it does require, in my opinion, having 3 in soul to be most efficient. That is a 1 card finishing move. Our Danger Lunge is also a 1 card finishing move. This takes the token offline. However, if your opponent only has 3 cards in hand, because you use this and then you use that, that's pretty good. You know, 3 cards in hand, you're gonna defend 3 attacks. Okay. KFCs, as I was explaining, it's pretty good, and it's gonna be good for board wipes and hand control together. So this is where I tend to hover to. If I wasn't building Shiranui, I'd be building a Jamyo Kongo deck that revolves around this, using also Sumajubashio and Tengu. So I might as well just show that here. So Ninja Traps, this here, okay? And that is an option, absolutely. Something that you could consider. I may as well just put them here since I discussed it. I know there are people that favor that. So, you know, there's definitely other non-Shiranui builds that we can work on, right? So these guys work really well together with Jamyo Kongo. This is a really welcomed addition to that suite of cards. So that's another deck. That's another day. Fuse a Congo. Fuse a Congo. Where are you at? Fuse a Congo. Fuse a Congo. Fuse a Congo. So, fusing Congo. Okay. So, how am I going to win? How am I going to pressure? That's what that's all about. So now we want to get to resources. We've got our triggers, right? And as I said, I do my best to eventually make it so you can screenshot whatever you want to do in terms of seeing the whole deck. I like markers. I'm going to be replacing these with Suiko. So I've really enjoyed If, and Ibuki's one of my favorite characters. I already have my, as you've seen, my Chronojet. It's all teched out with Ibuki sleeves, the original Ibuki sleeves, and all the markers Ibuki. So I figured, you know, for Protect, I mean, my favorite character is Kazumi Onimaru. We don't have that as a marker, unfortunately. We don't even have Mark himself as one. I do have a Shingo. Shingo never really, I don't know. He's okay. I don't want to downplay Shingo. But I wanted to find something that I thought would be really cool, kind of nostalgic for me with regards to If, which apparently is going to be over next week. And I decided that I'm going to replace, put 2 Suiko, maybe 3 in here. Because you really only need 2 or 3. I think you need 3 because you get them in hand so fast. So that's where I'm at with that. Totally irrelevant to the deck. Just, you know, I like the markers. I think they're a lot of fun. I was not terribly happy when I saw Ren markers go way up. I have 2 of the Force 1 markers from way back when I opened the case. And then I saw that recently they just went way up, just like Ibuki, which is kind of ridiculous. So, but you know, it's what it is. I say it's ridiculous just because I think that they're really expensive. But you know, are they worth it? To somebody, yeah, they absolutely are. So, getting back to our deck, grade 1s. So let's go here. Resources, right? So this is kind of a tight package here for what we're gonna do. It's pretty cookie cutter in a way. Might as well get our grade 3s out here. Here's our Shiranuis. And then we'll figure out here in a minute what's our finisher, because it's gonna go over here too, right? Finisher package. So for our grade 1s, I'm running him, and the reason I'm running this card is because you absolutely want to get into this. That's the only reason I'm running it. I am not running it for the second ability. Second ability, when placed on rearguard, your opponent chooses a card from their hand, discards it, and then you increase this force by their shield. So if it's a 0, you increase it by 15. That's actually not really that bad. Your opponent does draw a card though. So it's like, well, okay, you know. Nubatama is very interesting because it's like this huggy ninja deck. It's like, well, I'm gonna hit you, but then I'm gonna say, you know, it's okay. You do what you want. I'm gonna gain something from it, but I'm still gonna give back to you. It's very odd. But you know, I get it. If they gave us enough effects where we just took cards from our opponent's hand and didn't replace it, it'd be kind of busted. So the reason I'm running this at 4 is because of this. If we had Tobi Ichitashi, if we ever get it, then you can consider replacing this. I may just run 1 if I just, you know, high roll and get the 1 to ride and then go get this. But maybe not. But that's why I have this at 4. I think it's really important. I have this at 4 as well. This is awesome in the sense that you look at 7 and you get a card, you +1. There's no discard. Him, you look at 5, get a grade 3 discard. The cool thing about him is he's going to allow you to get your initial setup G3 ride, but also this can later game help you get your finisher, your finishing piece. So I'd absolutely run him at 4, no less, okay? And then Sakura Fubuki. Sakura Fubuki I have here, it's kind of a flex spot in the sense that if you don't have too much counterblast in the deck, say maybe just Gale and Shiranui, you may actually not need this. Now, if you're in an environment where your opponents are doing a lot of damage control, then this becomes even more relevant. It's an 11, so it does help make some lines. It does help you search, potentially compress if you're getting the right cards, but it's all RNG based. So grade 2s, in terms of resources, Gale's basically always in here because he is a resource card. He's going to draw us a card, and he's just really good. He's a really good beater, and he basically has after image. He's gonna go into soul, but then he's gonna pop something back to hand. So say you want to be able to search again next turn, pop this back to hand. Say you need more counterblast control. Maybe you want to do a little digging off the top, not necessarily looking for a grade 3, but something else. You can pop this back to hand. And those are effectively what you're going to pop back to hand. Depending on what we run here, you may pop something here back to hand as well, such as Mizukaze. If you don't get that finishing move off, you can pop him back to hand and do it again if you don't have another one in hand. You can effectively pop this back into hand too. Definitely, so that you can use it again. This card in Hanzo is kind of funny because you use this, you place it, they have to place a card. You then can bounce this back and have them do it again. Now, there's only certain times where you do that because it's like, well, wait a minute. Aren't you just bouncing everything back to hand? No, you actually pick. So depending on what their hand looks like, you may not want to bounce all their stuff back to hand, but bounce your stuff. So that leaves us with the other 2 grade 2 slots. This card is somewhat controversial in the sense that, you know, when you place it, your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand, discards it, and again, draws a card. They're hugging. I think the 2 cards are good. I don't really like the second ability that much, but it can be helpful actually. And so if your opponent discards a 0, which they probably won't, you would draw a card. On Rearguard Vanguard, when it attacks, counterblast 1, you bounce a card, rearguard to your hand, and one of your units gets +6 till end of turn. If it's on Vanguard, you draw a card. That ability is actually really good. So Bounce. I actually, that's why I have this at 4 now. I really like that. I like the bounce effect. The Vanguard on ride effect, I don't really care either way. So one of the things that I was going to do here too is I'm going down to 3. Why am I going down to 3? Because it gives me more room for what I want to do over here. What I think I want to do over here. Now, if I go Mizukaze, I'm probably going to want to run 4 because I'm going to want to rewrite. But if I go Jamyo Kongo, I'm definitely going to want to open up 1 slot because now I'm going to be wanting to have Jamyo Kongo as my finishing Vanguard, which is kind of interesting because in EX, Jamyo Kongo is Onimaru's Vanguard, right? So it's kind of interesting. Go back in time. Onimaru's Vanguard in terms of that timeline, right? When he was younger, and then Shiranui later on. Just talking about lore and story. But so we've got 8 grade 2s, we've got 11 grade 1s. I'm fine with 11, it's fine. Depends on what we're gonna do here. So if I go Mizukaze, I think it's okay to go 3 Mizukaze. 3 Mizukaze, 1 Oboro. Okay, that would be 4 grade 3s over here. Okay, so 1 more Oboro, 3 Mizukaze. That's one option that I'm looking at. Another option is 3 Jamyo Kongo and 4 of him. Let me get his name right here. Gyumato. Hopefully I'll never forget that. Gyumato, okay? So, it's interesting. These are new sleeves. Okay, a little dust in there already. So if we go Jamyo Kongo, sorry if you hear my stomach, haven't eaten yet. If we go Jamyo Kongo, 3 Jamyo Kongo because it's a finisher. We're gonna be able to search for it. You could go 2, I think it's kind of dangerous, but you could. 3 Jamyo Kongo, 4 Gyumato. Okay, so you'd be at 11, 12, 10. And that's fine. Okay. This is where I'm thinking I may go. I still don't like the fact that I'm losing the Oboro ability with the Dominate token. However, my opponent has 3 cards to guard with against 3 attacks. Okay, that's pretty rough. If you don't go Jamyo Kongo, you want to play more of a potentially long game, or be able to do more, do field control really. 3 Kokushigarasu and 4 Gyumato. That's what I'd do. Okay, so I might as well kind of piece this out now. So if you go Mizukaze, yeah, put in the extra Oboro. Put in the extra Oboro. I'm not doing either one of these, so you may as well just remove them now. But they are options. Everybody's play style is a little different, so could be good for you. Yeah. So there we go. Okay. So either control, so you either do this and control your opponent defending this way. Real straightforward. Just again, you need to be able to re-ride, or you lose the triggers drive check. Okay. So you want that extra Oboro. Or you go this way. Now this is combo. Okay. I like combo. I really do. You've seen my other decks up there, Jamyo Hanzo deck that done pretty well for me in the past. Not in the current meta, not for a while actually. It's combo. It's combo decks. So it's okay. You know, you're gonna have 4 of this, which means you should see this at some point. Definitely, you're gonna be able to bounce it back if you attack with it and you need to use it again later on. Maybe it's your grade 2 turn. You know, you slap this down, you attack with it, you slap with this, put this back to your hand so you can use it the next turn, what have you. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but you're definitely gonna want 3 of each. Okay. The problem I have with this card, again, it gets rid of those protects. Be very tempted to use this the first time you have the combo of cards in your hand. You're gonna have this. Maybe you're playing against Pale Moon. You've got one of these in your hand. They've got no board. They've got a big hand, but you got two PGs in hand. You're like, I'm gonna drop this. Now their hand's maybe like, you know, 6 or something. Maybe they had 11. Now it's down to 6. Did that really do much? Probably not. Okay, it probably didn't do much at all. Now, if you just wait and you be patient, you do some Oboro plays, do an Oboro turn, smack, 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 get their hand down, get their damage up, and then you go for your finishing move with Jama Congo, you still have those protects in hand that you're able to use to protect yourself against, I don't know, Luard, for example. You then do this, get them to 4, which is pretty good already, okay? That's pretty good already. You use this, now they're at 3. Maybe you got 2 of these, they're at 2. Yeah, it's pretty good. So this you know what this really reminds me of? Back in Technical Booster 1, when we first got Shiranui, this combination here really reminds me of Sukumura-kun with original Fuki, right? So this isn't binding, but it reminds me of Fuki with Sukumura-kun. So for those who know, you know what I'm talking about. It really does. It reminds me of that. So I'm thinking this right now. I really like hand control that way. But again, this right now I'd say is really somewhat the cookie cutter build with this. And then let me show you the rest of the cookie cutter build. The rest of the cookie cutter build involves Genkai. And Genkai actually is not a bad card. This actually is, I like this card. I was playing with it yesterday, the cookie cutter build, and I thought it was really good. So, you know, if you're gonna go Mizukaze, I would say you're gonna go to Genkai. So, okay, 2 or 3, depending on what you wanna do. But there's that. And that would be the Mizukaze build. Okay. Now, if we're gonna go with one of these with him, do we want this? Okay, is this something that we're gonna stick with? Are we gonna stick with Furai? Or are there other options? Okay. Furai can definitely, you know, it says one of her units. So he can definitely get the +6 himself, be a 15K. That's not bad. 15 with an 8 behind him is 23, magic number. That's actually pretty good, right? So, there's that. Would we want to consider something like Tengu? The problem with Tengu is we're definitely going to be going protect 1. If we want to protect 2, Tengu becomes a 13K beater. Tengu, it's not a bad option, but it doesn't put pressure. And that was always the problem with it. So it typically required a booster. But it's still very good. And it's a trap card, you know, it makes your opponent think about what they're gonna do. But there's another card, I'm just gonna put this here too. Some people like to play 4, so you can 3 or 4 there. There's another card I want us to talk about, and that's Bear. Okay, I haven't talked about him forever. Bear's interesting in this build because, especially if you go Jamyo, because if your opponent has 4 or less cards in hand, he gets +5. That sounds a lot better than an 8K Tengu. Okay, this is a 14K, just a little poke, but it's hitting, whereas Tengu's not. And why do I mention this with Tengu? Well, the thing is, Tengu's a Soul Blast. This is a Soul Blast. This allows you to choose an intercept, for example. and pop it back to your opponent's hand. And now they have to decide, well, do I want to keep that intercept versus discard something with higher value? Chances are they're going to discard that 2K or that G2 intercept because they're not going to want to discard that 15K shield. Okay, so it's effectively retiring an intercept. And this can be very important. We don't have Voidmaster in here, so we really don't have intercept control in here, but this card could actually help the intercept game. So yeah, I think that, you know, running him in place of this, it's an option. It's an option. It's definitely taking away that early pressure that this card can provide. The other thing I want to step back and say too, these two cards, their second, or I should say their abilities, not his first ability, but his second ability and his abilities where your opponent discards and draws, this actually helps Shiranui. It gets you targets. And if your opponent's not paying attention and they're like, oh, I have a Skull Dragon in my hand, I'm gonna just pitch this because I want it in my discard because that's how it's gonna work. They just gave you a really good target to dominate and bind. You're gonna get the effect of it and then it's gonna go away from the game. Okay, it's basically exiled. So they play a really crucial role there in that regard, or can, okay? So if you're playing this, I do recommend some percentage of these cards, typically, okay? And that would be the cookie cutter build, absolutely. I would say Furai is definitely gonna be in most Aurora decks because it does function that way. It has a good first, you know, it has a good ride ability. It's okay. And then it's Vanguard, Rearguard. You know, it's Vanguard and Rearguard centric. Any card that's like that tends to be something you don't want to sneer at. So, but Tomahawk, you know, I wanted to talk about him and showcase him as a potential player in this deck because it does provide pressure. It does allow us to remove interceptors, and it really messes with your opponent's headspace. Similar to Tengu. So Tengu basically says they have to discard a grade 0 if they don't, you draw one. So they're making a choice there. Tomahawk says, well, I'm going to remove an interceptor because I'm coming in for my finishing blow, or I'm going to try to get you as far down as I can. And we are talking typically about finishing blows though. So, you know, I'm trying to get used to that last, get that 5K off the board you would intercept with. But now your opponent's sitting there discombobulated. You're going for final turn. And they're now having to think about, well, what am I going to do next turn? Chances are there may not be a next turn. So a good player is going to pick up on that. And they play enough against you, anybody's going to start picking up on that. But this is an option, you know, in terms of a trap card, in a different way. So where my headspace is right now, I'm thinking I don't really need this right now because I don't have Gruit, and Excel really hasn't taken off right now in the English meta just yet, but this is always going to be in the back of my mind. I'm thinking Jamyo, and of course with the 2 lines of play here, I'm thinking this is going in 3 to 4. If you want to go up to 4 Sakura Fubuki, put this at 3, perfectly okay. If you don't want to run 4 Bear or this, whichever one you pick, you can definitely go to 4. But I'm thinking that I'm going to do Jamyo Kongo, at 3. I wish they'd made him purple. I don't know. I guess you wouldn't really be able to see him if it was purple background. But I just think that would have been cool. Anyhow, that's an aside. So there's our grade 3s that I'm looking at right now. And then grade 2s. I'm gonna go ahead and sleeve this guy up because I'm gonna run him. You know, when I was seeing the previews, this was like one of the cards that I got really excited about this card. Yeah, I was excited about Shiranui. I was like, I don't care what it does, I'm running it. It's my old boy Shiranui. It's our old boy Shiranui. I'm like, I'm running this. But this card, I saw this and I like hand control. It's like, wow, that's really, really cool. So now the big question for me is this right here. So, you know, this gives me more pressure on a grade 2 rush. Unless my opponent's hand is small. My opponent's hand's really small. Something probably not going right. They either had a G assist or something like that. But this allows me to bounce. I can bounce this. It's just really good. It's a really good card. So that's kind of where I'm at. Am I gonna run Tamahagane or Furai? I know some of y'all are out there going, run Tamahagane. I know my one friend saying that. He's like, yeah, screw Furai, run this. The thing about him is I now have all my grade 2s are counterblasts. Is that a good thing? It's pretty bad resource management if you don't ask, or I should say if you ask me, or even if you don't ask me. I would say that's pretty bad resource management. So, and you know, let's break the mold a little bit here. Let's break the cookie cutter aspects of the V era, or Boro as the Japanese have been playing it. Now English is now moving into it. It's a little bit more control, right? So instead of running Furai and Genkai, I've opted to go for more control pieces with Jami Congo. So let's see what we got here. Get all my cards together. Don't be surprised if you see another build with this in like 3 months, 2 months, 2 weeks maybe, who knows. Yeah, something like that. So, let's see what time we got. Oh wow, 48 minutes of hanging out with me, jeez. Yeah, it's past 8 o'clock now, cool. So this is kind of where I'm at right now. We'll see where it goes. We'll see how it plays out. The decks that I'm basically playing against are, which is fortunate. I play against Luard, so my buddy's gauntlet of decks he has Luard, he has Grand Blue, he has whatever variation of Bermuda you want, but the ones that are really relevant right now, Luard, Grand Blue, and Alter Ego with Volkswagen. So I get to play against all those, and it's pretty good, right? So Luard, yeah, absolutely, and Harmonix Messiah with Ilgama doesn't really hit this deck too much. Yeah, you're gonna search that one time and have to soul blast, whatever. Doesn't hurt this deck that much, but multi-attack, definitely all those decks, right? Notice a trend there. Luard and Alter Ego and Night Rose, all multi-attack, all of them, all very, very, very good decks. He would take any of those to a tournament and can do pretty well with any of them, including win. So, and then for me, I have this thing now, which I'm really excited about. I do have Luard, I've got Jet, minus Ribble, because we haven't gotten her, and Susanoo, and MLV. So that's what I have for my gauntlet. I really haven't been playing MLB. It's unfortunate, but you know, it's what it is. So the decks I prefer right now, this of course, and then I still love my Gears deck, but it's really kind of on the back burner right now. But then Luard, of course, yeah, it's a lot of fun. My Luard deck's kind of, I'm not currently running Router or Bat right now. I'm just kind of pushing hard with the grade 1 that becomes a 20k beater. But anyways, that's another video. I know some people get upset when I start talking about other decks like Deleters, which I also have sitting over there. I said that just for you. You know who you are. So this is my deck. This is where I'm at. Thanks for hanging out with me. Looking forward to Hanzo. Absolutely. We'll see what it does. You know, Hanzo's a really great card. I'd like to see somebody mess around maybe with Hanzo, with Shiranui, just to see how things go. But I will talk to you guys soon. Stay safe and peace out. Have a great weekend.